Welcome back to the CNBC TV 18 special. My guest is the Governor, Reserve Bank. Governor, you said that you are going to make it easier for banks or more flexible for banks to handle bad loans or potential sticky assets. The 525 rule will be applicable to existing assets as well. Is this not restructuring in disguise? That is what you are trying to end, but you are starting it again.
So let's be careful about what I'm trying to end. What I want to end is forbearance, which is call a non-performing loan performing, right? Now, that's different from what we need to do, which is assets which are stuck because there's too little equity coming in, because the payment schedule is too high and they can't make payments. Those assets could well become functional if the financial structure was altered. I want assets to be functional, to produce the stuff that they're supposed to produce, whether it's electricity or coal or steel. But we got to put assets back on track. The faster we do it, the better. Now, there's a bargaining process there. There are losses to be taken because the asset is producing less than what was anticipated at the time of the investment was made. That loss has to be fairly divided. And I want to emphasize fairly between the promoter, the banks, and sometimes even the government. Now, but if we can divide that, put that asset back on track, the economy is better off. I want to distinguish that from what in Europe is sometimes called extend and pretend. It's non-performing, it's not going to perform, doesn't have a hope of performing, and you pretend that it's functional and you lend it the money to pay you back so that it's on your books, but nothing's really happening. And nobody's getting more loans to actually finish the project. It's stuck. I want to stop that and say move from this bucket to that bucket where you're actually may have a different capital structure, but you're producing now.
But what will the provisioning norms be for that? Will it be same as a standard asset?
I think that we have to go towards provisioning norms which recognize the size of the losses. So when I say move, I also mean that we have to move to recognize the losses. Now, let me be very clear here. There are two things that we control, which is when you declare an asset an NPA and how much you provision for it. Now, the first part of it, regardless of whether we say it's an NPA or not, the analyst community already has decided. You call it a restructured asset, they call it an NPA, right? So they're not making a distinction. And in fact, as a bank, you may be worse off because some assets which are genuinely just restructured, which have the same value, shouldn't be called an NPA, are being called NPA by the community, right? So for them, it's better that those that are genuinely NPA are called NPA. Don't pretend that it's not an NPA. It's not it is an NPA. It's not going to produce value for the next 3 or 4 years. Let's call it an NPA. The second aspect is about provisioning. Provisioning is prudential. And what that means is, if I don't provision today and that asset turns worse, tomorrow I may have to provision double the amount or write off double the amount. It comes as a surprise. So think many of these banks are public sector banks. The government today may be setting aside only some money for recapitalization, knowing that, things aren't so bad. But if things are really worse, and they haven't provisioned for it, 2 years down the line, the bill that will come will be substantially higher.
Exactly.
So it is in the interest of everyone to recognize the losses as they come, to set aside money for that so that you don't have a surprise, and at the point where you have to make big investments, the bank can't do it because it doesn't have enough capital. Let's recognize the true state of the banks and move on. So when I say no forbearance, I mean let us recognize the true state. What that means is nothing on the real side. I'm not standing in the way of you doing anything in terms of restructuring. But recognize this is a non-performing loan and that you have to make the appropriate adjustments and give the bill to whoever has to pay the bill. Let's do that. Let's move forward.
So, short point, when the current loans are recast in the 525 mold, an element of provisioning, a larger provisioning will be there.
Depends. It depends on...
Will it be the NPL kind of provisioning?
No,
15%?
if it is a standard asset today, the norms for recast loans for standard restructured assets will apply. But we're not going to add to that right now. Now, there will come a point...
We always had 3 buckets.
Yeah.
We had standard assets, and we had NPLs, which is like the 15, the 25 second year, and 40% the last
and
year.
There was standard
and
restructure 5.
Yes.
5.
So does that continue?
That will apply till such time that it was supposed to apply.
Okay.
Right? And at the point...
but for the 525 projects?
Again, so to the extent that it is standard, and all you're doing is maintaining the NPV and changing the term of the loan, then in that case, and we have to work this out, we can be a little more flexible on the provisioning, but we have to work it out.
Okay. Are you satisfied with the way the joint lender forums are working? For us, for the reporters from the outside, it is actually the CDR mechanism becoming more opaque.
Well, Joint Lender Forum should not be seen as separate from the CDR. It's sort of a stage before the CDR mechanism. It's basically saying, what do I do with the assets? Do I restructure them? Do I liquidate? Do I get new management? So there's a decision before that. Then it goes into the CDR process, it goes somewhere else. So in that sense, I don't see why it should be more opaque than the CDR process itself.
We used to get numbers of CDR cases. Now, in the pre-case, not much is known. So, are you satisfied? I mean,
well, we're monitoring it. So, it started in April of this year. So, it's a little early to get strong numbers because remember they had 120 days to do what they needed to do. It's a little early, but we will see what's going on. The bankers seem to be quite happy with the fact that this has coordinated them a little more effectively and coordinated them early on because of the SMA2 classifications being the prompt.
Okay, more about restructuring itself. In the last downturn, 95 to 2003 or 99 to 2003, it ended with 3 big steel companies getting recast by the entire banking system. Jindal, Ispat, Essar had to be done. Do you think something like that will have to be worked out for, say, the gas-based power projects?
See, gas is probably one of the most problematic areas, and the key there is, I think we have to recognize that the supply of gas which was relied upon is no longer there. So this is one of those situations where there has to be a loss-sharing agreement because the losses definitely are there. So let's see what the government
anything in the works? I mean, asking the banks to work with the government?
No, banks, you don't need to ask them to work with the government. They're working with the government.
No, so get the government to work in. I mean, some kind of a package, or is it to be written off? Will they go the Enron way?
No, they'll have to figure out how they do it. I think these assets are salvageable at a particular price for gas, and maybe the particular demand that they service, peaking demand, may be different from ordinary demand. Those discussions are going on by amongst people who have a much better sense of what needs to be done. I think that let's see what happens.
Let me come to the new bank licenses and the guidelines that you have put out for small banks and payment banks. Will the old fit and proper rules apply to these applicants? I mean, a lot in the previous round had been of universal bank licenses were rejected because of fit and proper. One regulator or the other objecting or saying that there is a move against that company. Will that continue to hold, or is it different because the stakes are small?
See, in this country, a bank license is a license to print money, right? So you have to be a little careful about that. I think that we'll have to follow reasonable fit and proper rules. I don't think that we would have to, we would want to make, allow for weaker fit and proper. But I think there will be plenty of applicants who will meet reasonable fit and proper criteria. So let us see. I mean, I don't think the rules were that strict last time either. But
we were told a lot of people didn't get the license because of one fit and proper miss or the other.
No, some. If you're being investigated by the CBI for something or the other, it's very hard for me to say that we don't worry about that. And not not something ordinary, but some serious misdemeanor. I shouldn't say misdemeanor, so serious allegations. Until you're clear of that, it's very hard to say, we're giving you a free pass. So, but I would say that my sense is there will be enough people who would pass any reasonable fit and proper criteria. I don't think that's going to be the constraint.